the majors in some ways had stopped buying all these bands, right? And I think that the labels like ourselves became, we don't need a major to do that job. Bringing Yellowcard in, where we went with Future Hearts with All Time Low, how we were progressing on Wonder Years, what came about with Neck Deep and all these bands we did, Used and Taking Back Sunday and Sum 41. There's really nothing out of reach for us. I don't mean that in a way like where I have no humility. I mean, there's still days where we get plenty of no's, and I hear from people all the time, well, you don't have a lot of hits. Yeah, maybe because you don't see it on a chart somewhere, but I got plenty of hits and kids who lose their mind over this stuff.
Did Neck Deep change anything? I think they were the first UK sign-in that sort of went global for you.
There was this sort of feeling, I don't think that's going to work for you, and there's not been a pop punk band that works in the UK or something like this. And the experiment was, can we make this band quite big in the US right off the bat and then send them back? Yeah, we proved that point.
I guess the thing to start with is, how did you get started in music?
How did it get started? Well, thanks for having me here. And I think, how did it get started? Probably more like tall tales when you turn 46. How did I get started in music? In third grade, the public school I was in, they passed out free instruments. And I think as a disabled kid, there wasn't going to be a real big future in sports. So my mother had encouraged me to take one of the instruments home, and took home a trumpet, which doesn't make you the coolest kid at school. And I started playing music, which was great. Getting up to high school, I think that I started to meet some kids. I think I was coming to this space of, hey, I've spent a lot of time in the hospital, and now I'm a real boy in a real school with needing real friends. And I saw some kids wearing cool leather jackets and listening to music on headphones. Thought that looked very cool. I've seen that in a magazine somewhere, and I went up and bothered a few of these kids to be my friend and said, what are you listening to? And they said, you wouldn't know it, kid. And I think that day FOMO was spawned in my heart, and I was like, of course, I wanted to know. And it was kind of a fun start to like say, okay, well, I need to start listening to these bands and memorizing. I'd be asking every day, will you make me a mixtape? It was a very annoying child in that way, and making older kids make me cassette tapes so I could listen to bands, and it was fun. And a lot of these guys were starting bands in that era. It was middle 90s. A lot of people were like, oh, I'm starting this punk band. Have you ever heard of the Sex Pistols or something like this? Something basic. And I was like, that's great. And I couldn't really, I didn't play guitar or anything like that, so I wasn't going to jump into one of these bands, but I wanted to be at the shows, and started going to basement shows in my little town in Western Massachusetts. And it was such a cool little scene. There was 150 kids always at these shows, and I thought, well, I can probably put on a show. This doesn't seem that hard. Just charge $5 at the door and get a basement. So I started putting on some shows. And as some time passed, I said, I'd like to join some bands. And that sort of, I think, like a lot of people's stories, like started helping to record bands, had a pretty bad 4-track tape machine that had 1 track broken. And whatever it was, I wanted to be involved in that music space. I didn't think it was going to be some kind of career, but it was a lot of fun to do it in high school at the time. And it was an easy way to make friends. The more shows you did, the more you went to, the more you traveled to, the more you talked about it. If you memorized all the bands, you could talk about that with other people who showed up with the t-shirt. You know that band? I know that band. So my start in music was about making friends and having a crew, and it continues to be that way, but that's how I started. I moved off to New York. I met this amazing guy named Dave Shapiro, who I'm still pretty close with. Met him when I was very young. I had been working in some studios, been doing some live recording, live sound recording, and Dave's band was very cool. I met him at a Battle of the Bands of his high school. We were judging that Battle of the Bands to give him free recording time. And he was sort of in a Third Eye Blind cover band, I think we'd put it. He'll hear this later and be probably pissed off at me. And we started hanging out. Guy came over in his grandma's car and played me every record he ever owned in his entire life. And he was like, do you know Chris Carrabber? Do you know Agency? Do you know this? Do you know that? And this lifelong friendship came up. And at some point, started helping him with his band. And he said, you should go on tour with us. We're going to go on tour forever. We're never coming home. And I said, that sounds crazy. I got to pay my bills at my apartment. He said, don't be lame. Don't do that. Just break your lease. Let's go. And as often with Dave, he won. It was a good idea. I left and I toured with his band and other bands for a very long time.
How old would you have been then?
20. Yeah, would have been 20 years old at that point. And I did, in fact, break my lease after There's some other stories in there that are probably not good for air, but a lot of things came to be in Albany, New York that said I should really leave Albany, New York forever. And so I did break the lease, sold all my stuff, put it in a backpack, and said, I'm going to grow my hair out and I'm going to go live in this van. Because it'd be better to have a cool story and die doing that than, I don't know, work selling glasses at an optical shop or, running mics at a studio. It all felt pretty miserable. And pre-social media, everybody I had met from somewhere else was telling some tall tale about how amazing life was on the road. And I'm easily susceptible to buying into things. And so I jumped into it. Did that for almost 5 years on the road, doing tour management, live sound production, accounting, mechanics work, whatever it took to be living in a van for 11 months every single year.
And was that all sort of lower level bands, or was that signed bands? Or
I think, I wouldn't say low level, but everyone was getting signed at that time, like 2000 to 2005. Dave's band, Count the Stars, who are incredible. I mean, just a great group of guys, all friends. They signed to Victory at that time. I went and worked for this band, Hope's Fall. Love those guys. They were on Trust Kill and various in between. Did Warped Tour a bunch in that era. So, I guess in the sense of they were signed, they were doing, national touring. We're working with all those early day promoters that are all now Live Nation and AEG and everything else. So I thought they were superstars. And again, for me, it wasn't necessarily I'm going to work in music. It was there's not feeling like between where I'm from and the health problems, I would rather go have some kind of crazy story like I've read in all my books. And it was, I'm going to work in the idea that this is going to be romantic and fun and interesting. And then it turned into a job.
nice. I think that's a pretty good way to approach having to go and do something. You moved to California.
It did.
You worked at Starbucks for a bit whilst you did that.
Yeah, that story is a well-known one. So David, who we just talked about, was, excuse me. David was already out in California, and my brother was looking to make a change, and it was sort of like, come move to California for a little bit. It'll be great. You'll love it. It'll be awesome. And I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this tour, and these tours paid in cash. And I was like, all right, I'll come out there, and flew home to get my brother and a very old car that we had shared, this aubergine colored, translating, aubergine colored Mitsubishi. We drove across the country and got to California. And the moment I pulled into the driveway, the car broke down. Classic. Expected, though, very expected to have this thing break down. And between paying for the car and the first month's rent and all that, I was broke. And I said, well, I got to get a job as soon as possible, and health insurance would be great. I walked down the road there in San Diego and put in an application in every single store within walking distance of my house. It's the only way I knew how. I mean, the last time I'd applied for a job, I was under 20. So I had no other skill than that. Starbucks was hiring. They called me back. I did the interview. They said, well, we looked at your resume. There's a really big gap here. I said, yeah, I was working on the road. Like, what does that mean? I think that the assistant manager might have thought I was a weird homeless man who's been living in a van down by the river. And, went through the hiring process. They did bring me in, and it was an awesome job. It was so simple. Show up 15 minutes early, memorize all the customers' names, leave 15 minutes late, be buds with the manager in the district, be cool, be nice, don't be weird. And, and it came with health plans. I mean, I don't have some political stance on Starbucks other than I got a part-time job, and if you could work 20 hours, and if you walk to all the other Starbucks around, you could pick up shifts and get up to 38 hours a week. And even as I say it now, it sounds weird to have gone through this process, but I said, I just need to make money, and if people will keep hiring me and I just keep flapping my lips, maybe other jobs will come. And picked up some jobs doing live sound at a couple of venues, did some graphic design work for a designer I met at Starbucks, one of the customers. And I thought Starbucks was great. Plus, every day they throw out all that food, and if you're the guy who volunteers to take it to the trash bin, you can hide it behind the trash bin and then take all the blueberry oat bars home, which really cuts down on costs because there's fruit and oats, and it's a fantastic mix.
Genius way to go about it, man.
Yeah, that's how we get here today.
Was moving to Cali sort of like a make and break for music for you, or was it just, I'm going to see what happens? And
it was probably see what happens. To be fair, this job at Hopeless is still my first desk job. And I didn't plan to work in music. I I don't know if this is embarrassing to say, I don't think I had a plan. You know, I think that I've said this before, I think my life is, to me at least, was stick out your thumb and trust in yourself. And coming to California was a lot about wanting to be with my brother and with David. I mean, these are, I love these people. And I think it was about being there for them and about trying something new and getting the job at Starbucks. I just trusted that something will come of this. And I started working at clubs and I was like, something will come of this. And I didn't have some existential worry, and I didn't think that music was a reasonable job, and it could have been just out of years of growing up hearing that's not a real career move. That's just something you do when you're young, and then you grow out of it. I got pretty lucky in the sense that David was working for Equal Vision Records as their in-house booking agent. He's very good at it, and David owns an enormous agency now. He's one of the, you know, besides being one of the best guys I know, he's one of the best agents I know, and uh, the owner of Hopeless Records, Lewis, had reached out to David and said, "Hey, you're doing a great job at Equal Vision. Do you want to do this for Hopeless?" And David was like, "I'm busy and I'm starting my own agency, but you should talk to my roommate. He needs a job." And then I got a call from David one day, and he said, "You got to take this interview." And I said, "Oh, I'm interviewing for some casino in San Diego County to be, production manager there." I thought, well, maybe there's transferable skills. Took the interview. It was a long interview, and to be the in-house booking agent at Hopeless Records, which I don't know if I had skills for it, but Dave was like, "I'll just show you how to do it. It'll be fine. I'll help you out. It'll be great. You'll love it." And so I took that gig, and it wasn't that moving to California was going to be better for my music career. To be fair, I had made a whole statement about how I didn't think California was that great, and I should move there, and I will never go here. And then I ended up there, which seems to be a theme in my life. I have a big opinion about a thing, and then later on, I eat the words, and they taste terrible. Um, yeah, it was more about being there with people I love and, going to shows. I mean, we had this little apartment, but we would host every single band that came to town, and I would cook dinner for everybody. And it was nice that the job came through. I've obviously been there now 20 years, so um, but it wasn't like I'm moving to California because I want to have a job in music. Came to California because people I loved were there and wanted me to be there. And I thought, well, I'll just figure this out as I go. And then I got this gig and I went into it going, well, I don't know what this is. I don't know what an in-house booking agent is. I think I know what a booking agent is at this point. And I took all my old tour books and just called every promoter in there and every manager I knew and said, "I have this job. What do you think my job is?"
So what is that job then? Explain it to us now, you know.
Yeah, so, I think in this amazing era between 2003 and 2008, there was just this explosion of bands, obviously, that era of the Fall Out Boy and Taking Back Sunday and all that, and so many of these amazing labels, like we mentioned, Trustkill and Hopeless and Fearless and Rise, and there was so many bands and not enough, everyone was on the road touring, and getting bands on tour was paramount, and there wasn't enough agents. I say that. The correct way to say it is the bands weren't at the level that they needed the agents that were willing to do the work, right? And kudos to those agents for making good decisions. We had some bands that needed to get on the road. And it was like, well, can you go book them? And then the goal was to book them and go speak to agents and managers and say, "Hey, will you work on this project with us?" That was the role inside there, where I think for Dave, it was, I'm going to be an agent. Mine was, I'm going to be here until we have the team on board. I would never tout that I was a good agent whatsoever. And I think the artists I was working with were so young, it was asking for favors and, um, it was a fun job. It was just a tough job.
Is it still a job that exists?
No, not anymore. I think in just that time and place, it was important. I think what happened was that since the role was to go create relationships with agents and managers to talk about, hey, one, this is what we're going to do at Hopeless. This is how we do things. Here's how we can grow this. As time went by, other jobs were offered to me. Like, we had a charity tour called Take Action Tour. And for many years, this was a big piece of the fabric of the community, and it was, hey, can you go help put that together? Can you run all the sponsorship? Can you run the production and setups? Hey, can you help out on the merch? About that. And at the same time, I started, because I was trying to get bands to package up and do these small tours. Hey guys, I just spoke to this band. We should talk to them. They're really great. It was a semblance of again, just like the what band are you listening to? I turned that annoyance into an office antic. You should listen to this band. It's a great band. You're going to love this band. You should listen to this band. And surprised I've made it 20 years. The job doesn't exist anymore, no, and I think what became is more of a hybrid A&R role here for our team at Hopeless is that we believe that we can go sign that artist, help them find that team, and then be a part of that process of, "Here's how we think you should tour. You should talk to this promoter. You should talk to this agent. Hey, guys, we'll reach out and help you get on this tour." So a lot of the skills that came from that gig still exist, but the role doesn't exist.
Is that easier for you to reach out to people and build that team because Hopeless now has such a strong reputation? It has so many years of being successful and finding good bands that everyone just trusts you.
I would like to think so. I think that on a future podcast, you can ask someone who's worked with me if I'm a pain in the ass or not. I think that I'd like to say the answer is yes. I want to trust that we have done the best job. I mean, as a huge music fan, we have artists that everything that we sign, we believe in completely. It doesn't mean that everything's going to work like someone else's expectations in that way, but it is, in my opinion, easier to call an agent or a promoter or a manager and say, "Hey, I'd love you to spend some time on this." And I think they take it seriously because of that track record. And I don't want to pretend that everything is a home run right when we sign it, but I do think people give us the time of day, which we have a lot of gratitude for. We really do.
What did Hopeless look like back then when you joined? Because I think it had a couple bands that were already doing well, like Thrice and Avenged Sevenfold. But was it still a small label, sort of like, that was getting to know what it was doing and growing?
You know, by the time I got to Hopeless, they were in their 11th year
Oh, wow.
at the
Okay.
company. Yeah. So, I mean, it was, Lewis had been running an amazing business, from the start. When I got there in 2005, Avenged had gone up to Warner, Thrice had gone to Island, and it felt a little fresh in a way, right? And I think for my colleagues, Ian, who's one of our other VPs, and Aaron Choi, who's our general manager, we've all started within 6 months of each other. I think there was 6 of us at the company at that time, and several of those people were leaving within the first 6 months I came there, and I think in a way, like, the business of Hopeless was running very well. I think there was a transition, though, coming from that, like, more punk rock, because Lewis's long history with, like, Fat Wreck and all these other companies, like, we were a, Southern California punk label, and we were sort of changing into this burgeoning space that you'll find now that we're the Epitaphs and the Fueled by Ramens were like the emo punk space. And it felt at that moment there was a transition happening, and when we got there, we were obviously working on the Avenged legacy, the Thrice legacy. We'd had other artists like Melee that had just signed to Warner. There was quite a bit of, if you shout out to Dan Ozzie and his book Sellout, if you haven't had a chance to read it.
That's an awesome book.
It is great guy, great book, an amazing book, well-researched. He's an incredible guy. That era there was majors, and they were looking to sign from these field teams of indie labels that had started in the 90s. And I think Hopeless was in that space. And, we just celebrated our 30th last year. And, Lewis's history of guiding those deals for the company really sort of kept us an independent while some of these companies were sort of selling to the majors and all of that. And, but we were starting fresh with a whole new crew of bands. And we were, at the time I was working on Neural and Caddisfly and Amber Pacific and a few other bands that, probably nobody remembers now. And we, through the Amber Pacific relationship, we met All Time Low, and that was an early signing along with Therefore Tomorrow and Ann Arbor for the team. And I think that, in a sense, the label had a good seat at the table amongst at the time, like I said, Epitaph, Rise, Fearless, Hopeless, Equal Vision. We were in there, of what our, 1 through 10 rating was. I don't know. Someone else should tell me someday, and I'll nod or cry, whatever you'd like that to be. But I think at the time I joined, it always had felt, and and Ian and Lewis and all those had talked about this, there was this moment where things were shifting, and we were there right at the beginning of that moment. Like, the business had been set up and was ready to grow out of the Avenged and Thrice space into what was next.
What did your job turn into then? Because I think you progressed into doing sales. Is that because that job disappeared back then, or was that just a natural progression for you?
I don't know if it's a natural progression. I talk way too much, which is a known fact. And I think that the sales, as I was doing the in-house booking thing and I was doing the touring and the sponsorship and the merch, I was trying to figure out what was next because I got very good. I became great at, in my opinion, of getting the band's agents and managers. So we'd get a new band in, and then I wouldn't be doing anything shortly after besides just advising, and then I would spend my time looking for bands to annoy everybody with, in a sense. Um, at the time, our sales guy was leaving, and Lewis, who's our boss, said, "I want you to try sales. I think it'd be a great job for you." Because I've been saying maybe I start my own agency. Wasn't very excited about that, but thought, that's maybe my next thing. And he said, "Let's try this out." I said, "Okay, we'll give it a shot." So, and it was such a funny moment because I went and did my meeting at Tower, and then 2 weeks later, Tower closed. And then I went and did a meeting at Circuit City, and 2 weeks later, they closed. And iTunes was brand new and on the rise, and I think it was such an interesting time to be hawking CDs, which were still 95% of the business, And about 4 months into that, Lewis had come in and said, "Well, what are you doing about the German sales?" And I said, I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Well, if you're doing sales, you're doing it worldwide. That's how we do it." And he said, "So what are you going to do about the worldwide setups?" And I said, I just don't know." And he goes, "Well, let's see what you come up with." And which was a leap of faith on his part. So I took on the sales role, and then I took on our international role. And I was telling the story last night of coming here in 2007 and taking some meetings and largely hearing like, "It's nice that you're here. You're an American company. We're a UK company. Let us do our work and let us know when your band is here and we'll do a thing or two." And I appreciated the older men who were telling me that. It made me feel that like, okay, well, um, in my heart, and you can bleep me later, but fuck you. I'm going to do what I want here. And, spent a lot of time doing our international setups in distro and business and hired our marketing teams over here while doing domestic sales. At the time I was doing our digital promo as things like YouTube were coming up, and obviously Apple was a big piece of that time. Like iTunes Music was enormous. I went through the ringtone era in a big way, a lot of conversation with Verizon and all these companies doing ringtones. I did all of our merch for a very long time as well, like, because we did have designs for some of our artists, like where are we selling it, where are we warehousing, in conjunction with Ian and Aaron. But yeah, sales was my next role. I did that for a very long time, but I never stopped working on the new artists that came in to say, "How do we get you on tour?" And often would be meeting with managers and agents and promoters wherever I could go because the relationships existed, and I liked working on the music portion of it, which I think was an interesting hybrid to be guy selling CDs, but also doing this nascent A&R work.
Did that coincide with All Time Low becoming the first band that really broke the UK from the label?
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a subscribe. It really, really helps the channel. It'll help us keep booking more guests and doing more podcasts. So let's get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a big piece of it, I mean, kudos to those guys. They work incredibly hard. They still do, and they have such an incredible fan base. In those early days, I remember when Plain White T's was going to take them out, there was this debate about paying the tour support. It was like, well, is that a lot or is it not? And you're looking back, and it was very little for what came out of it. And, those guys, I think sometimes American fan base or business doesn't see how well they did here in the UK very early on. And they had, at that time too, Radio 1 was taking rock music maybe a little more seriously. I don't know if that's a rude thing to say or not, but, All Time Low was that thing we could come over and say, "This is kicking ass. These are the teams we're going to have. We are going to go work this at radio. We are going to get A-list on this. We could get in and, call HMV to say, we're going to sit down and talk to you because this is what we got. Hey, UK, Apple, this is what we have." And, I think for the team in, the Hopeless team, we could come here and say, "I know you don't know much about us, but we're breaking an artist here, and we're going to keep knocking on the door until you open it up." And we did that work, and it made a huge difference. And I think that previous to that, a lot of the labels from the US didn't have a team or a setup here or in Europe, and we felt pretty emboldened to do that. I mean, if we're going to sign these rights worldwide, we should have people on the ground that are music fans. Everybody who works at Hopeless is a fan of music. Like, the story I have is not unique to the people I work with. Like, they are huge fans. They've been a part of the scene. We did the same thing here. We hired those team members and went and worked it. And that was, All Time Low was a huge part of that. I mean, a huge part of building this, the team here. And it was fun to work on. And we were able to bring in and work on other things along in tow. And then we could say like, "Hey, we do Avenged." "Oh, we didn't know that." Yeah, that's us as well. And it worked really well.
Avenged, had they already moved on by the time this was doing that well? Because it's
Yeah.
crazy that they wouldn't have broke the UK for you.
Well, I can't speak to what the process was like while they were here because I came to the label in 05 and they went upstream right at the end of 2004 to Warner. We obviously had the catalog, and I think it's one of the things that I love about being at Hopeless is that you're at Hopeless, we're going to work your project for the rest of our career because we believe in it. We believe in you. We believe in what you're up to. We believe in what that means for the community and the culture. We want to work hard on it. Avenged was already at Warner. And, from the sense of like working the catalog for them, we talked about it all the time. I mean, it was a huge piece of the fabric. Waking the Fallen is still a game changer for the company, and, but we weren't working it as if they were ours, right? We were just talking about it in the sense of like, here's catalog. We want you to don't take it off the shelf. This is an important record for this band, but All Time Low was here and we were working that while bringing new bands over.
Do you remember any specific sort of exciting moments that came from that band blowing up over here?
I'm trying to think of a good specific. There's so many amazing moments where I think that, probably the moment they did Wembley here, I think we were going through Nothing Personal and all that. I think that in so much of even the history of like Wonder Years and Neck Deep and All Time Low and a lot of the bands we have, I think it starts, I think when I walked in, I was telling you, the belief system of who is this band? It's never going to work, oh, that sounds like something else. And it felt like clawing and fighting tooth and nail, and I think that when you can get to a place where you're going to sell 10,000 plus tickets and you walk somebody in and you say, you can't really say that anymore. We've done the work, and I know that, we don't have a problem twisting arms because we believe in these projects and these artists. Like, we really do. But it is nice when you can walk into a room and say, yeah, I mean, the band's done the work, management's done the work. They have done and put in sweat and tears and their own money, and we've gone and done that on the back end on our part of it. And you can turn around and say, you know what, there's no more debate about this. And I think that moment around Nothing Personal at Wembley was a huge, huge, huge marker.
How did you go about actually signing the band in the first place? I heard that they like showcased with Fueled by Ramen, and then you sort of like swooped in.
I don't know about the showcases or anything. I remember showcases. When you say the word showcase, I get a queasy feeling. I remember these things. I remember being with Counting Stars years ago and having to do these. It's very awkward to get on a stage in front of 6 people and be like, we're going to play a show now for you. They had been touring with our band Amber Pacific, and we just liked the music a lot. We loved what they were doing, and we just reached out, started the conversation. Like, we'd love to do this. We got on the phone call. The guys were young; they were in their teens. I remember talking to their parents, and I was young too. So it was Lewis and myself, and everybody's just chatting with the band, and it felt like a good match. And I know obviously through this process for every band, there's so many semantics of, okay, what is our favorite label based on what they have, and how do we get that done, and who's willing and who's the most excited. And I think we got in there and did that deal. And it was, I remember being a really fun process. I remember being out in Baltimore at Sonar and saying hi to the guys, and they were so young, and it was going to be a lot of fun. And we were talking about their release show, going from this 400 cap room up to this 1,000 cap room in the area. And it felt big. And at the time it was like, okay. And then when the EP came in, we were like, okay, this is great. We worked it, and it was selling an inordinate amount of CDs, and we still couldn't get people to take it seriously. And
Was
then,
that Put Up or Shut Up?
Put Up or Shut Up, yeah. And then So Wrong It's Right came in, and we heard Dear Marie, and we're like, oh yeah, this is it. And I think at that time there was so much noise, it was hard to cut through. But that record came, and we just started. I mean, I remember from Ian in our office being at MTV and myself being at Target, which the big retailer in the US, and sort of these big markers like, here's where we got to win, and we won people over it. But credit to All Time Low. I mean, if you've met them, their attitudes and personalities, like they make people feel a part of the process. They're always very family oriented in that way, is the way I'd put it. And
I've met with them a couple times, and they've been awesome. The first time, I'll only say this because it was so cool, but the club we've got in Birmingham, we had approached them to do a DJ set, and they were just like, we don't really want to do it after the show. We're probably going to be pretty tired, so we're just going to chill. But they were just like, can all the crew come and just party? And we were like, yeah, of course. So they ended up coming with the crew and partying, and then they were just stood with us on stage, and they were like, can we DJ? And we were like, if you want to. And they were like, we won't charge, you just looks fun. And then Jack just jumped on and did like an hour and a half.
Mhm.
Like, we didn't pay shit.
That just I think the one thing that we, I'm sure everybody knows it at this point, is that from the early days, it was, we're going to go out and have the best time of our life together as buddies, and this is, and so many bands go through so many changes, and All Time Low has not. And I give them a lot of credit of figuring that out and putting it together and being sort of their own family and having fun. I don't think anybody can ever peg them as it's, oh, they got to do it for the money. Like, if they like it and they're having a good time, they'll do it, and I can't speak for them. I can't put words in their mouth, but I've always felt like they're honest, they're forthcoming, but they're going to go have a good time, and it's about their fans. And I think that's what's allowed them to be who they are.
Are they the first band that really broke, that stuck with the label?
I think so. They were with us for a couple records, and during that time of so many majors coming in, they did go to Interscope for a moment. I think there was a lot of changes in that era of what is rock music post this period. A lot of A&Rs going away, a lot of changes. I think they made a great record. They worked really hard. I think that I don't claim to know all the changes at Interscope, but things did change over there. And then they were back out looking for a new home, and we reapproached them, and said, hey, we'd love to work on this again. And they came back, and we did Don't Panic, which was, I think, the most fun. It was nice to say, hey, we're just going to go back to basics in some ways. And God, it was a great campaign. It was long. There was lots of videos, did a lot of fun stuff. And then, getting to Future Hearts was such a huge, huge moment to have that #1 around the country. But I think, yeah, in the sense of like bands sticking around, I think in extending deals, I don't, up to that point, I don't remember having, using the word extension much, but we had a brand new history with them that was a one-off, and we extended that. And from there, I think in that there of time, we'd started working on Wonder Years. We had Yellowcard at the label at that point. And a lot of these where, I think the big sort of conversation point within there is that the majors in some ways had stopped buying all these bands, right? And I think that the labels like ourselves became, we don't need a major to do that job. Like around the, we have offices in 7 countries. We can work radio, we can work all the we'll call it big boy stuff. I don't need a major daddy to come in and do that work for us, right? Like the structure, this team, what we're able to do and access based on relationship work and being here. I mean, there was a time where I was in the UK 5 times a year, busting around, and I think that changed the way we thought about stuff. It wasn't, okay, I hope someone buys this out. It was, let's go make hits together. And I think what we did with the bringing Yellowcard in, where we went with Future Hearts with All Time Low, how we were progressing on Wonder Years, what came about with Neck Deep, and all these bands we did, Used and Taking Back Sunday and Sum 41. It was, there's really nothing out of reach for us. I don't mean that in a way like where I have no humility. I mean, there's still days where we get plenty of no's, and I hear from people all the time, well, you don't have a lot of hits. Yeah, maybe because you don't see it on a chart somewhere, but I got plenty of hits and kids who lose their mind over this stuff. So was All Time Low the first? Yeah, I mean, that relationship went for a long time.
Did it hurt when they left?
Am I on a personal sense?
Yeah, in a personal.
No, I mean, we talk about this all the time. I mean, I think that the goal at Hopeless has always been this. I want to work with artists that want to be here. And it is, this no parents, no rules type business, right? And I think that you got to remember that, or if you don't know, right, to be in a band is pretty hard work. Hard work in the sense of you're going to tell your family, I'm going to be in a band, and they're going to go, oh, great news. Can't wait to support you. You're going to tell your partner or someone in your life, like, hey, I'm going to be out here for 7 years and make no money, if I ever make money at all, right? And I think that, we have a lot of great colleagues in this business. I have that bias, like Hopeless is amazing. I love it. I'm here. I've been here 20 years. But I think for every band that is here, we'll put in the effort to say, we want to work with you again. Here's what we're proposing. Here's how we're going to do that work. But, if a band needs to go to another place, I think it's our responsibility to celebrate that choice, because it is a hard choice to make. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's like, F these guys, which is fine. I just think we have to support that decision and then be a partner to them, because this is not a win or lose game, right? This is a community, especially on the, you look back at history of like Warped Tour and all the different labels. it's better to be supportive and helpful to everyone. I don't think it makes any sense to be like, well, screw you, never call me because you went here. I don't think that's the case. And I would, we'd love to work with any artist that makes sense for us at that time and makes sense for them, right? Because there is obviously a emotional, creative building side and there's a business side to it that's a contract and all of that. So on a personal sense, do we want to continue to work on things? We will continue to work on things, and I hope that anybody calls, and if they don't, that's okay too. Like I'm in this for the long haul because I believe there's a kid who needs it just like me. I needed this at one point in my life and I still do.
Are there any bands that you've really missed out on, or things that sort of like major mistakes that have happened along the way where you think, ah, shit, we really fucked it up with those guys?
I don't, it's interesting. That's come up before question wise. And there's always a conversation of, did you miss a band? As I was just saying, like bands make the decision where they want to go. Was there something we could have done differently? I don't know. It's hard to answer that. And I think you get into that space of, oh God, we missed it. And it's a weird space because I think if the community's thriving and we're all still working, we're signing bands, then we didn't make any of those major mistakes. Are there bands that I would have loved to have been in at the ground level? Oh yeah, there definitely are. Did we still get to hang out with them and do collaborations and writing? Yeah, we did. So I don't know that there's a good answer to that. I think that like, oh man, I missed that one and I cried all night. There was artists that I think were like, man, I wish I could get in on like 21 Pilots or something like that. It's like, but ultimately they went to the place they wanted to go and had infinite success, right? So all things happened correctly, universally, statistically, whatever you want,
Is the UK a big part of Hopeless's business then? I mean, you're in multiple countries. I think you said 7 are in the world. Is the UK substantial, or is it just like a small part of that piece?
No, it's a pretty big piece, and it's sort of in a twofold. Like if you're looking at it strictly from numbers, like it's the second largest country for us, as far as things go. We've spent a lot of time relationship building here, right? So we do well. I mean, oftentimes the moment I sign a band these days, I'm like, how soon can we bug, slam dunk, and download to get you over here? How soon can we have you here? I think it's not, I hope you get an agent overseas. I want my artists that we sign in the US to have an agent over here as soon as possible. We also spend a lot of time looking at UK artists. I think there's an incredible scene here, from London to beyond. And I'm always happy to sign acts from here. I don't think of them as international acts, especially in the essence of this community. There's a community that loves this style of music that lives in every major city in the world and beyond and speaks the language of this culture, right? So UK is a pretty big deal, and I think that it's also has to be stated that there's very little press left in the world, but there's definitely press left in the UK, and that still means something, and I think it's nice to be able to call Rock Sound or Kerrang and have a conversation about what we're doing and have them be supportive, and we have a lot of cases where you can go build a story in the UK and that goes worldwide. And I think for, bands with fans, like look what we got in the UK that feels big no matter what. And then of course, having artists come over here and get large quick is super helpful. Even we're talking about the Scene Queen phenomenon and just, that download performance of 10,000 plus people watching, like it changes the story. And I know there's a large ocean between us, but I do think that having artists here early is a huge important piece of what we do to help bands develop.
Did Neck Deep change anything, like for the label in that sort of sense? I think they were the first UK sign-in that sort of went global for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think when we walked in, I was telling the story, but I think when we signed Neck Deep, there was this sort of feeling like, I don't think that's going to work for you, and there's not been a pop punk band that works in the UK or something like this. And the story I had heard is they stopped over in Florida on their way to Australia and sold out a huge garage. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I went and saw, went online. I was like, oh, these YouTube numbers are pretty wacky. And I think my first thought was like, there's going to be so many people. There's going to be so much competition. And I called the manager and we got to know each other and got to know the band. And it really wasn't. And, we got into business with them. And I think that first tour, like we helped fund and put together this tour for the band to headline in the US. And, big one up to Nick Storch, their agent, who put a lot of effort into this and booking them in these small rooms. And the experiment was, can we make this band quite big in the US right off the bat and then send them back? And in a sort of grand sense of the thing. And, went to the Wonder Years guys, will you please take Neck Deep out in the UK? No one else is taking them out. And they did. And I know they just did the tour recently. I was there in January, and it was so nice to have Soupy stand on stage and go, we took this band out, and here they're taking us out. And like, there's never been a nicer group of guys that would like return the favor later on, and it's true. It's really a beautiful thing. In the sense of changing for us, like, I think that Hopeless is always, we're going to show everyone that they're a little wrong about a band. It didn't change much there. But in the sense of like, can you make a UK band that from Wales that is pop punk, a global phenomenon? Yeah, we proved that point. And I think that that's continues to get proven and is quite an amazing feat. Again, I always want to say these bands have to do a lot of this work. They put a lot of time, effort, and stress into it. But it's been amazing to be a part of it.
I guess they're looking at that thing of it being like, there'd never been a pop punk band from the UK that had done it, and these are the first one. Do you think if it hadn't have been Hopeless coming in with the plan of bringing them to America, that another label could have done that with the band?
I mean, anything's possible, but they didn't. So, in the multiverse theory, I'm sure as soon as I can travel through wormholes, I'll let you know. Look, again, I always want to say, whether it's an All-Time Low or a Neck Deep or any of the artists we've worked on, right? These bands put a lot of effort and time in, and I don't, I think that labels, the job is to magnify that connection that an artist has with a fan, right? They're doing the hard work. Do I think that someone else could have done the job? Anything's possible. Do I think that we had plans that ultimately worked out? Yes. Am I proud of that work we did? Did we have some, we should do this and it didn't work? Sure, that's going to happen with any project we work on. But I think, as I've used the phrase tall tale all day, which might be a real Americanism here, but in the sort of light of history, saying like, hey, the band came into this amazing headline tour in the US and sold it all out. And that story that we started selling, like, you're not paying attention to this band kicking ass. And they went and, opened up, they were direct support on their second US tour for Real Friends, who were having a huge moment at that time. And by the time they were doing their world tour with state champs, we were still telling people like, hey, better start paying attention, and maybe there's a different answer here, but it was really out of the case of like, we love to build relationships at Hopeless and have those great relationships and go tell people you've got to pay attention to this. Is it possible? Sure. I have no way of knowing, but I know the work we did, I'm really proud of.
Was the Warped Tour sort of important for Neck Deep and growing the band?
Warped Tour is important for a lot of bands. You definitely feel with Warped Tour being gone, that missing piece out there.
Has that changed the landscape for you having to do things differently?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I think that, Kevin, who started Warped, is a close friend. I'm partnered with him on another project called Summer School. And I think that, hopefully Kevin knows how grateful we are to him. I think that the idea was that, okay, a part of that planning was, when are you going to put your record out and how are we going to get you on Warped Tour? You're going to be in front of, 8 to 20,000 people, depending on where you're at. And so much of that brand of Warped Tour was a known, and it was like, we have Warped Tour. And I think for Neck Deep, it was, they're on Warped Tour. That's very sellable commodity back here in the UK to all of the partners, like, hey, and when they went out there, the crowds for them were voracious and crazy, even on the small stages. That's what you wanted, right? Like, we're doing the Kevin Says stage and 1,000 people show up. That's a very sellable commodity, right? And you could really look at that landscape of Warped and say, we started here, we went here, and now we're headlining. Then there was the summer camp that was everybody hanging out in their buses, getting to know each other and collaborating, going on future tours. Like, it's hard to express unless you're there what Warped Tour was to that community and how it helped grow all of these artists into that when we were a young style act, and I think that Warped going away, you missed that development piece, right? That this is all the bands on Warped Tour are, if you like one, you'll like the other type thing, right? Or at least you hope that. I think without a community summer tour like that was a traveling festival piece, you have to add a couple years into your development plans, because you really got to go one at a time. And how do we headline, and who are we supporting, and how do we get in front of this many people and this many brands and this many fans? And even if you're not coming to Warped Tour, you've seen it, you're following it. Maybe you went last year and you're saying, I wish I went this year, look at the lineup. it was a huge piece of how we did development, and it is, in my opinion, it's a missing part of how we do development in this alt space.
Nective have just released a new song.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean they've got an album coming?
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. They'll let me know soon, though.
Fair enough. What are the sort of plans then for bands replacing Uprawr? Like, I mean, obviously, like you've just said, they have to take an extra couple of years to jump on other things. But is there something where there's like a direct replacement where it's like, we know that the process was we put them on this, and now the process is that we put them on this?
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think that there's no silver bullet for anything, right? And I think that from that era now, it is still about fan connection. That's what it was always about, was fan connection. And what has replaced that? I mean, so much of this is, I think the joke we use is touring at home. Like getting on. It's not just so much like I have to be on social media, right? That's just a tool. It's more, what is that message I'm putting out there? What is that thing that I'm saying to you? Oh man, if you grow up someday, you could be like me, sort of vibe. Like that piece now is, how are we creating narrative and speaking to fans to make them part of this on a grander scale than just, hey, I played a 500 cap room and sold it out. That's awesome. 500 people is great, and they'll go out and do the conversation. But how do we build out that story in a way that's very shareable, that people can still feel a part of it in that way, where they're looking forward to both seeing their favorite band and going to Warped Tour, right? Or, Taste of Chaos or something like this, right? This is that now plan, and it's different for every artist, is how are we laying out music? What does that music mean? What is that visual? What is that piece? What is that ongoing narrative in between? How is it consistently being shared? And how are we magnifying that and connecting that? So much of that is in both visual and storytelling that happens a little off the road in some ways. And if that connection is happening, then we can bring that in to the, to the day-to-day, in a sense.
Taking that into account then, that's sort of, you need bands to be very social media savvy. One of the other signings you've got is TX2.
Yeah, we love that.
That's sort of the opposite of a Neck Deep story, where it's somebody that's already got a following and they're well-known online that's now moving into it, rather than somebody that's completely anonymous.
Right.
Is that something that's a completely different process when you look at something like that and they've already got a following?
Different and not, I guess the way I'd put it. TX2 is one of the hardest working kids I've ever met. Much maligned. I mean, wherever TX2 sometimes gets announced, comes with a 10,000 plus commentary, and I think sometimes people forget that TX2 is a real person, and but it's interesting because the process for us doesn't change, right? Like, what's the difference between an artist that can sell 500 tickets wherever they go and we sign them, and someone who has, 1 million followers on TikTok when we get started? Like, there is an existing fan base that wants to hear what they have to say. In the case of TX2, he does have that base, and they are listening to him, and he is saying some things that are important to him that I think some people might feel are controversial, or they don't like that, and I keep that kind of soft. But there is a process to saying, like, for a TX2, or maybe that's a Scene Queen or someone like that, or even like on a Noah Finn's level, right, who's a UK artist that we work with here. How many of the fans that like these artists for what they're doing in the social connective space are going to fold into loving the music and buying tickets to the show? It's not everybody, right? But it's that same process. Like, how are we helping to pick the songs, put out the music with the artist? Like, I want to do this song. That's great. What's the narrative going to be? Are we going to do a video? What's the social setup going to be? How is that coming out? How do we follow that up? How do we talk about that with yourself or Spotify or, Kerrang or something like this, right? And a lot of the process is the same, but we do want to bring as many of those fans over as possible, while hopefully on the music side making new fans. And it's the same process. Like, will you take this artist on tour? And in some cases, I think for the artists that are more internet friendly than just coming up from the bottom musically, you're going to get some like, I'm not sure, I've seen that person online, I don't know what to say about that. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to twist anybody's arm. This artist will grow. And we've seen plenty of examples of everybody goes, fuck that. And then in about 18 months, when that artist is selling 1,000 tickets a night, they go, I was always a fan. So I've been around long enough to know that today's hater is tomorrow's like, absolutely, I'll work on that.
Some of the negativity that he gets in line of the hate, is that just seen as exposure?
That's an interesting question. Anybody who goes online, we're looking for exposure, right? Do I think that Evan believes in what he has to say and has a philosophical mission? Yes. Do I think he's dedicated to it? Yes. Do I think a lot of people want to set that on fire? They do, but it takes a strong person to say, this is what I am.
How does he cope with it?
It's a great question, and it's one that I think Evan, who is TX2, should answer on his own. I think we've had some conversations. I don't think it's easy. I think Evan's been through a lot in his life. I mean, to be an artist like Evan and to have that strength, he's gone through a lot of hard stuff. And I think that the kid, and we got to see him on Ice Nine Kills, and we saw his headline tour. I mean, the headline show in LA was, was tears in a way. It's like, there wasn't a kid who didn't line up after the show to have him sign something. And I think, some of that metaphor of like that kid that no one ever liked in high school, that people just passed by and didn't know who they were, like that was Evan. And Evan is out there making this music for that person. And they're showing up being like, you speak for me when no one else will, right? That's not going to make everybody happy. And I want to work with people who believe in themselves like this. I want to be around people who, I'm not, not everybody has to buy into Evan's message, but there are people who do. And there are people who feel like without Evan, I'd have no compass, right? And that's always been the importance of this community in general. But I think that for Evan sticking to his guns, so to speak, is helping him to grow because he's not wishy-washy about it. He is TX2. And anybody can go online and see what that Rancor looks like. And, Evan puts up with a lot, but he keeps at it and he's working hard at it and he's got a vision for it. And I think that it's commendable.
Does it change the way he has to tour? Because if he can't sell 1,000, I don't know what he sells, but if he can't sell 1,000 tickets, but the kids that are turning up to see him are fanatical, then is that sort of difference when you've got a band that they can sell 500 tickets, but the fans are just like so general?
Well, I think if you're selling 500 tickets and out there doing the work and there are no generals at that level, right? Like I think if you're selling out the underworld here in London, there's not that kid who's there, they're in it. Cause I've been in the underworld and it is, you have to go through a physical fucking effort to be in that room and not sweat to death and die. Do I think there's a difference? I think I would suggest to the artist that we headline as much as possible because we want to give those kids their show, right? And we want to go find like-minded artists and go build your community around it. Do we still need to go out and support? Yeah, we do. Do we need to find that support? Yes. I mean, everybody's at that same story level. I think the difference for a TX2 is he has people that are obsessive, and he just did a headline in the US and he had a lot of people out, and I think that rinse and repeat that process will create this huge community that goes, it's us against the world in a way, right? So I think in a strategic sense, focusing on that idea is more important. Obviously, it has to be tempered. It's not my decision. It's my suggestion. And I think the way we work with artists at Hopeless is that, what would you like to do? Here's what we suggest. Here's what our history says. But they're your fans. You stand on stage. I want to side with you. I just want to talk it through, right? So for that process with TX2, it's still early in the game, right? And it's a lot about the music and the social approach. But on the touring side, it's where can we support? And if we can't, I don't think there's a downside to headlining. But again, we have to have those conversations. He does have a fan that absolutely obsessively loves him, and it is very nice to see,
How has your job changed then, sort of day to day, if you're more A&R at the label now?
I'm only A&R at the label. Well, I'm not the only A&R. There's another A&R. You can't hear her or see her, but she's right over there. This comes up. It actually comes up amongst friends and like, has your job changed quite a bit? And the answer is not really. The semantics and the tools change all the time, right? Like what was once Friendster and the Live Journal is a TikTok now, right? So what I was just saying about TX2, in the conversation about All Time Low and about Neck Deep, it's still about finding artists who believe in the idea of doing this, right? And like are all the way in. And I want to believe that every artist who work on, like, I'm doing this for life and I want to collaborate and have fun and do this thing. And I think in the sense of like having those conversations, it hasn't changed a lot. Are there changes of it used to be put out a record, and then work 3 videos and we'll grow this thing and the album will grow off the back to we're going to put out 5 singles and then drop an album, and then in 8 weeks, you'll go and tour and we got to get more tracks to continue to get people to be excited. Like I said, the semantics of how to develop artists, the tools have changed. Some of the ways you do that have changed. The way we think about creating music, like, okay, I'm going to go make an album and that'll be good enough. It's like, okay, let's go create as many songs as possible and like pick out what wants to be first. Some of that has changed a bit, but because we're such an eclectic label in the way we sign, like I'll have artists that still, let's go make an album. We'll put that album out. We're going to go tour that album for a long time. And then I'll have artists that we've done 10 standalone songs and we want to turn that into 1 EP. Will it be an album next year? When does that first project drop? It just depends on the artist. So
do you find that depends more on sort of how long the artist has been in the industry? Like the more sort of legacy ones like their albums and the newer ones want to drop Spotify singles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends, right? Like, and I'm going to generalize a little bit, and if I'm doing maybe like a Wonder Years record, right? We're going to work a lot on the album. It's going to be about the concept, and if you're a Wonder Years fan, you know that, the way that Dan's writing lyrics, it's going to be about an epic in his life, and it's so much about where they're at in their sort of arc of their career as human beings, right? So the album's very important. Maybe if but it might switch, like if I'm working on, someone like Scene Queen or something like that, there might be a lot more songs because that drop of that song acts a little more like an album in the sense of the whole narrative and the visual, but we are moving towards an album because I do think projects at some point are necessary to show where you're at in your career. But in the early days, just dropping songs is the most important thing now, where in 2005, it was, okay, go make your album and let's get that album out. So after that's done, we'll keep putting more into stores and all that. It's just, like I said, the tools and the process has changed. And yes, if you're been doing this for 15 plus years, your next move is going to be an album, and you also need some time off in your life. You're a real human being.
With signing sort of more legacy sounds like such a ridiculous term to use in pop punk, but
I agree.
Legacy bands like Sum 41, New Found Glory, Yellowcard, how does that differ to when you sign the up and coming bands? Is the label looking to sign more of those because they're so well established and it brings sort of prestige to the label, or is it just sort of looking at them the same as everything else and it's cool?
I think legacy is a tough word because these artists are alive and working. If we're talking about the Eagles, I think there's a legacy there, but not to say that there's no legacy with these acts. The conversation starts at Hopeless with, can we do a good job, right? We're going to pinpoint something like, hey, we know that Sum 41 is out of their deal at the major. We know the majors have given up on, that's the wrong way to put it, because they have changed the way that they're doing their business, maybe in the sense of these rock bands, or at least in the way that they're thinking about this particular artist. Could we do a good job? And if the answer is yes, and we know that there's an availability, then we'll go have that conversation. But the way the conversation goes for us, we obviously respect what they've done, and we're going to listen to what they're willing to do because they've been doing it a long time, and they're going to bring a lot of knowledge and experience to the table. But I want to think about this as, how do we grow from here? It's not, okay, how do I service this artist at the level they're at? I don't want to be in that space ever. It's, how do we go and engage everybody who might have not be paying attention as much as they used to? And how do we find new fans that are younger? And how can we introduce like some of the younger artists in this community and things like that? So the answer is approaching it with, these are excited, hardworking people that have lots of room to grow. How can we go be part of that?
I think I know the answer to the next question. In 2025, are labels still relevant and do bands still need them?
No. Yeah, I know. Not at all.
Okay.
I'm really joking. I mean, to be fair, and I think it'd be interesting to ask some of the artists that we talk to, that we're trying to sign. I think a lot of times I will say, like, I am here because I'm interested in helping you grow your project. But I know that if you don't need a label, then don't sign with one. Like, 'cause there's so many options to do this work on your own, right? Like, you can go make that money. But I think I still believe that, look, as a company that Lewis started and that we're all here together, we get paid bi-weekly to be there. We're employees, but that job is that it's a lifestyle, and we go build relationships so that we can go say like, oh, you don't believe in this artist? Well, I'm going to show you. You don't have to do anything today. You just have to hear my voice. Like, today you're not paying attention, but in a year's time, we'll be back here at this table having that discussion. And I think it's sometimes hard because so much of the rhetoric of they took my rights and the label X and they didn't do X, Y, and Z. And I think the process, like a smart marketing partner is going to say, you have something special. Let's go work together. Let's go find, and I don't know if I can use baseball references here, but let's hit a couple of singles, couple of doubles, and start working on RBIs. Again, I'm sorry if baseball references are terrifying for everybody. I'm not even a sports fan, but it's all I got. I think there's always relevance for smart marketing partners. We're willing to invest, and it's beyond like, here's money, right? That's not, deals can be done and struck and things like that. But a team of people who care, are passionate, love something, and know that they can call someone at these places that, like, from the promoter to the agent to the magazine to the radio to the video, whatever that is, to say, I need you to pay attention. We're going to be working this. Trust in what we do. This band is going to be big. This artist is going to be big. I think it's necessary along the way to find people to help elevate something, because look, I'm just one person, you're one person. It's hard to do all the pieces when you're just off on your own. And there are incredible managers out there who can do a lot of that work. But at some point, you need to have a dedicated team, in my opinion, that's with you for a period of time to help say, okay, here's how we can take this work off your back so you can focus on the creative. Here's suggestions we have. Here's the timing. And we're going to go have that conversation with partners that trust us. And we're going to go open doors for you. And we're going to take that on. Do I think they're relevant? I always think passionate, hardworking people who have great relationships are very relevant to helping people grow their dreams.
Have you had any bands that you've signed that no one's heard of, and they just think, I've signed to Hopeless, I fucking made it, now I don't need to do anything?
I hope not. I do think that exists in a lot of places. And I think, like we talked about, like being an artist, being a band is uniquely challenging in that sense of like, okay, can I take a breather for a second? You know, can I take a moment and relax? I think that's natural. I don't think we have any artists like that. I think everybody we've signed is in it to win it and grow it. I think that I think we've made good choices in that space, and that's part of it. Like for me, if I want to partner with someone, I want to hear on that conversation that they're in it and they're going to do all the work. Like they've already been there and said, I can make a video, I can call this person out, or if I don't, I'll figure it out. I'll call somebody sometime, somehow. Does that scenario exist? It does. I can't name any bands that I've worked with that are like that. I've definitely worked with artists where it's like, man, why isn't this growing? But there's also different expectations. And every artist on my label is going to be #1 hit artist at radio, right? We have plenty of artists who put out that are incredibly successful that play 500, 800 cap rooms, you know, and they mean something to someone. But I'd be challenged to think of any artist I worked with that didn't get in and try their best.
What sort of size room do you think they need to be playing before they can, I don't know if this is different in the US to the UK, but that they can be playing to support themselves and not have to go and get a part-time job or something else to financially keep them going?
It's a great question. Some of that's like, if there's 6 members of your band, it's going to have to be larger, right? If it's just you and you're paying a few people, I reasonably think that if you're, and this is a total guess, and I think it varies artist to artist, if you're in major markets and you can do 1,000 plus tickets, 800 to 1,200 tickets wherever you go, you're going to make a reasonable amount of money, right? Obviously, you got to have quite a bit of money in the business account to cover, like, okay, we're going out, we got to pay prepaid crew and all these things like that. There is quite a cash flow. If you're a business student, the cash flow equation for being in a band is nightmare quality stuff in some cases. But I think that if you can reasonably, after 3-4 years, you've been doing like, hey, I'm doing 800 to 1,000 tickets wherever I go, I think you're reasonably making enough money to have my apartment, you know, and have the sort of creature comforts and all that outside of, you know, being on the road part of the year. That is very much a guess. You know, I mean, there are some artists that live so frugally that they sell 500 tickets a night and they're doing just fine, and they love the lifestyle so much they would never change anything.
Do you look back at sort of your career and Dave Shapiro's career and just think, it's fucking crazy that we've done so much?
Yes. I mean, I just saw these, my other really great friend, Michael Kaminsky, who's a manager, and another great friend of ours that's worked in TV forever, Brian. We just took a short vacation together to go see one of our favorite bands, Drug Church, down in Costa Rica, since the singer of Drug Church is a close friend. And I think we're all sitting at this restaurant, and I'm looking across going, I had to make this joke. Everybody looks so damn old now. Um, you know, there's still a lot of work. There's more work now than I even remember. For whatever reason, I feel more motivated and more excited to do more. And I think from Michael's standpoint, it's the same. From David's standpoint, it's the same. And do I look back and think, based on what I was telling you earlier, that I wasn't sure? It wasn't I'm going to work in music. It was, well, I have this job. I'm going to go try to do a really good job at it, right? I mean, I think that was what was instilled in me as a kid, right? Did I think we would get to this place? I don't know. I never had a dream of it, but am I grateful and happy that we are? Am I grateful that people trust me? Has it always been an easy day? Have I tried to be friendly and good to everybody? Yes. Has there been, feelings and all these things? Sure. It's been stressful. There are times, but do you remember anything specific? I'm like, my God, 10 years went by and there's so much stuff that's happened. I don't remember anything specific anymore. I'm hopeful that I can continue to do this and that it's meaningful. I do think that kids are affected by this. I will never forget how important it was to be at shows as a kid, and how much having a group of people that I could, even if I didn't know them, say, oh, you know who Smashing Pumpkins are? Oh, that's great. We should talk. I'm 14 and I need friends. And I think I never want to lose that. So do I think in that process of getting to this place, I didn't know that I would be here, but I feel like I've worked really hard. I want to continue to work hard. I don't think that this is a given at any given day. Things change, as you were mentioning, all the time. I can have at one point an artist selling out of Wembley, and then I'm going to have an artist who's going to sell out the garage, but both things are really exciting, right? That first time a band can go and sell out the underworld and I hear about it, I'm very excited. And I think you can never lose, like, oh, geez, this is small. It's not. It's all big because this is someone's dream, right? So, yes, I never thought that it could go this far, but I'm really grateful for everyone that's given me the opportunity to work on the project. And I hope that they felt that I put in an enormous amount of effort, emotionally, physically, across the board, because I care.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about summer school? We had Kevin Lemon on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was a Zoom one. So you're the first American guest that we've actually had in person, which is very exciting.
I'm happy to be here. I love the blue table. It's very nice.
But yeah, I mean, he mentioned it briefly, but if you'd just like to talk about it a little bit and tell us what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and we're having that conversation about what Warped Tour was, right? And I think for Mike Kaminsky, who is my buddy, and we work on a lot of stuff. He has quite a few artists that we work on at Hopeless. How are we bringing people together to have a place where people go, especially coming in? I mean, you mentioned legacy. I think in that sense of this community is always going to be cyclical, and there's so many amazing artists right now, and there's so many that are trying to grow and trying to get big. But where is that place for them to go and have a quick community, right? So I think for Mike and I, we approached Kevin to talk about this idea of, like, it's, the spiritual father being Warped Tour, like a Lollapalooza, but we want to go build that community again. We want to go do that thing. And I think that that's where it started from. And it was like, well, can we do this? And how do we do this? And how do we come up with a thing that is a low ticket price with as many bands as reasonable in this size club, like 1,200 to 2,500 cap rooms, and go pick some up and coming artists that haven't done that size room and say, let's put them all together. And let's go do as much marketing as possible. Let's go be that extra team that Warped Tour always was. And we have to start somewhere and put in 5 years of free work to do that. And that's the spirit of it, and we did. Last year was the first year, and it was absolutely incredible.
Is the plan to just keep that going annual?
As long as my health doesn't give out, yes, yes.
Do you think in this industry you have to make your own luck?
I think it's tough to say. I don't know what... It's a great question. Do you have to be a persona, I guess, to do this? I don't know. I think when I was getting into this, and even now, like, there are people I remember because I think they're unique and interesting. Do I think in the sense of, like, any job in any industry, you have to be someone who has a point of view, who's willing to have an opinion and listen to other people? Yeah. Do I think you need to be, I don't know, some kind of weirdo? I don't know the answer to that question. Do I think I'm a weirdo? Sometimes when I think about my life, I go, you're kind of a weird dude. Do other people think that? I don't know. I hope they don't come to me like, man, I've heard about you. You're a weird guy. I would probably feel some insecurities about that even in my middle 40s. Ashton, am I a weird guy?
That's been in the best way.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the answer to that question is sure, why not? If you can, but you don't need to. I think you can just be a regular person, right? I don't think I need any fame. You know, I don't need to be the best A&R again. None of that stuff. Like I love, it's always for me about being around famous people and how cool that is. And people don't know they're famous yet, but I think they are. And I really just love it. I've always loved that as a kid from a little town from nowhere. You know, I didn't have any dreams of any of this. Like Los Angeles was, you know, that city with the riots I saw in Predator 2, you know, it's like, wow, that seems far away. You know, like you'd see beaches in a documentary and is being there something wild for me from where I'm from? Yeah, you know, and all those things. So does my persona get shaped by where I've been from and the story that I've lived and sort of, I wasn't sure I was going to do this, but I am doing it. I want to do a good job and I want to have a great life. And I, you know, have an amazing partner. I have a, you know, Katie has this amazing 9-year-old that's in my life. And I love, I want to live a great life. So if that makes me, you know, I guess in the normal sense of living in a house and going on vacations, and I think all that stuff is pretty fantastic. So if that's what my persona is, and that's a weird persona, sure, if that's memorable, awesome, you know. But you know, I think if the goal is I need to be a weird and interesting and crazy person to do this job, I think that's maybe for someone, not for me. You know, I like melting into the background.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been the guy in the background. This is the first time I've ever actually put myself at the front. So, if
Wow.
you could relive one moment in your career, what would you go back to?
Relive one moment. I've never had that question. I don't. The first day I got this job, probably. I was worried that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And something about that moment of being like, well, if I know nothing, then everything's available to me if I'll just try to be a little patient, you know. And I remember sitting at this card table that was our kitchen table in San Diego, and my brother was going off to work. I had just finished my 4 a.m. to 9 shift at Starbucks, and I was at this table at 10 o'clock in the morning going, okay, it's my first day at Hopeless. I got to book some bands. I better start making some calls. And, you know, and I think within 15 minutes, it's like, well, I'm just going to open up my used laptop and open up Excel and make a giant list of every person I think I know, and then go through. And I made this long, like probably 100 or plus names of like any agent, promoter, anybody I knew. And I said, I'm going to start at the top, you know, from my memory and call people. And then the next day I got to log into Polestar at the time and made a list of all the bands that I like from the community and made a huge list of all the managers that from Polestar and all the agents. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to email all of them and say, hi, I'm Tobin at Hopeless Records. It's my first day on the job and I'm just trying to meet people and I'd love to get your advice. And only a few people hit me back, you know, and that was okay. And I said, I'll take you out to lunch. And I loved that first day. We'll say first day in a sense, like the first couple of weeks, because I just, I was excited to try something new. I was excited to make friends. I was excited to go and have a little bit of fun. And I was nervous and I was scared. But at the same time, you know, the best way to combat that is to put yourself out there, I guess. I kept hearing my father, like, you just got to go out there, got to knock on doors. Okay, this is me knocking on doors. And a few people did come back. I was telling this to Jillian Newman, who manages Taking Back Sunday. She's one of those very few people who responded. And I was like, you know, can we go out to lunch? And Jillian's amazing. She's a great mentor and a great friend. And, you know, it was just fun because my conversation wasn't about, there was nothing to sell except for, what do you think I should do? And I'm very excited. And there's something very cool and interesting and fun about, there's nothing to lose here. There's nothing on the line except for, we're going to do the best we can. And that day was awesome.
In contrast to that, has there been any low points?
I'm not a low point kind of guy is my self estimation, you know?
I get that sort of vibe.
Yeah, so I don't know, like, there are days where I'm tired and there's days where I'm stressed out, and I've definitely had people, I think I mentioned, were like, "Well, you know, leave it to us and don't bother us." And I was like, "That ain't gonna happen," you know? And I've had people tell me things, and I've had moments where like, "Oh, I feel like this relationship is damaged or something didn't go right," and I'm bummed at myself, but I don't have like, "Oh, no, woe is me." It's a, well, we just, you know, it's not about what was, it's about what's going to be. And where we want to go is it's always forward. You can try to turn it around, but I've not seen any clocks go backwards in my life. And so for me, I don't know if I had low points. I've had great points. I've had points where I'm like, okay, I just got to work a little bit harder. But I think that's where I'm at. I've never, oh, fuck, I'm ruined. And even then, I probably wouldn't recognize it. And maybe I'm a little stupid in that way. I don't know.
What advice would you give to somebody that was looking to get started in the industry?
That is a great question. My advice would be akin to what I was just talking about with my greatest day. You know, like, don't take yourself too seriously. You know, like, it's not about you in that sense that if you do a great job, right? Like, whatever you do in your life, do a great job because it's fun to do a great job and it's fun to, you know, have meaning in that sense, right? And maybe that's an old world mentality in its own way, but I think if someone's getting in the industry, like, find something you're passionate about, right? I have to have a job in the business. I think that's fine to be passionate about that. But if you have an artist you like, call them up and say, God, I love what you're doing. I would love to do something with you, you know, and come up with what that is because you have nothing to lose. And if you can keep that sense of excitement and wonder, then it'll be a fun job. And you'll get more jobs because there's always a need for people who are excited and just want to go. Skills can be taught, you know. You can learn how to be better at Excel. You can learn how to make better phone calls. You can learn how to take a better meeting, but you can't teach someone how to be passionate about something. And if you like music, then understand what could I do to help. And if you can even figure out the smallest specific thing, then just call. You don't have to get paid for something you love. But sometimes if you do things you love, you'll get paid for them.
I think that's a great thing to sort of end on, because the experience that I've had with people that have been really successful is that they are the most passionate people that I've met in the industry. There's like dudes that own companies that have been in the 60s and I've been with them and they've just been like on a whole nother level of loving listening to this new artist. And I've looked at them and thought, man, you're rich as fuck and you're powerful and shit. Why are you still listening to that? But they're doing it because they absolutely love it. And I guess that's what's made them so successful.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that it's, you know, like I said, it's the gratitude, like I'm here and people give me this opportunity to do it. You know, I mean, I think it's a simplified story to say, hey, kid from small town is disabled, gets job in industry and works hard. Like, it's all that stuff is, you know, it's extras and frostings and makes good story and all that. You know, there's definitely been specific and significant challenges, but I like doing this. I like finding the artists. I like being their friends. You know, I had an artist I hung out on Saturday and, you know, and it was just so nice to just sit and chat about what they're doing and know that I just love them. I think they're great, you know, and it doesn't, like, the other stuff that will come will be great. It'll definitely make life a little more fun if we can go to Disneyland twice with Emma or something like that, right? But I think that, but the real reward is just being able to still do this.
Is there anything you'd like to mention or promote before we finish?
Oh, there's so many things. One, if you're in the US, come to summer school. I want to come and meet you. You know, I'm very excited. We have an awesome lineup this summer with Charlotte Sands, Taylor Acorn, Rain City Drive. If not for me, Arrows in Action, Beauty School Dropout. You know, on the hopeless level, I'm so excited about this Michael Clifford project. You know, Michael from 5 Seconds of Summer. This is his first solo foray, and it's such an awesome record. And we have a song dropping today, which I know this will air later, but on May 22nd with Austin from Water Parks that I'm very excited about. That one's a big one. Neck Deep is coming around, and we have a lot of amazing for the UK. If you haven't checked out Karen Dio, I highly recommend it. And you know, our buddy Noah's got some more music coming this year too. There's a lot of great stuff. I was always a little bad at the pitching stuff because I want to talk about every single thing I'm working on. So I think I'd most like to promote how amazing this community is. And if you're just starting to check out Uprawr to Veil or An All Time Low, keep digging. There's some really great artists down there. And it's I hope to run into and high five anybody at every show I ever go to.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate you talking.
Been awesome to be here.
To everyone that's listened, thank you for listening. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you get podcasts. If you want to watch us, we're on YouTube. We'll catch you next time.